called the National Minorities of China. There are 56 national minority nations of China. And the two largest, of course, are the Mongolian and Tibetan. What is the largest ethnic minority in Taiwan?
Oh, well, they're not minority now.
So you're considering Pingpu as Taiwanese? The equation?
Well, I don't consider them as Taiwanese, but they're just of in a size that they weren't considered minority anymore. Like they're not one of the tribes. I mean, one of the 14 tribes, right? Because they're so synthesized that if they don't have their language, they kind of lost their culture.
So when I first arrived in Taiwan at National Taiwan University, there was a museum that featured the 9 tribes, and the 10th in one case was called Pingpu. And I asked people who are the Pingpu, and they said they don't exist. So within 20 years, the Pingpu that have not existed now have become the majority through their historical reevaluation of integration into Taiwanese society. So these cases actually, the Department of Anthropology was organized by the Japanese in 1927. And they were still using the same cases with the same artifacts as from the Japanese period, and included some remains and collections from the 1950s and 60s. And so what they had collected from Pingpu were those Siraya or gamelan items, just a few fragments of things, and just threw them together into one case. And really did not have any further description about them. So in my stay over the past 20 years in Taiwan, I have noticed a complete transformation in what has been considered indigenous and the majority population, the ruling population, high culture, low culture. Everything has changed, transformed. And it's quite interesting how conditions are today and what I'm expecting to change and transform in the next 20 years. So to be a member of Taiwan Studies is extremely interesting, to observe all these changes in the perception of culture. Okay, first of all, what is ethnology?
Study of culture. Am I right?
And what is culture?
Society, a group of people's values and beliefs and norms and the way in which they live.
What is the difference between ethnology and sociology?
Sociology is qualitative. Relies on set questionnaires and getting a lot of information, whereas ethnology.
So if ethnology is the study of people's culture, and we define culture as the tools people use to construct their way of life, and sociology is the study of how those people within a culture communicate to form institutions. So essentially, culture is the tool, and society is the relationship. And the war between anthropology and sociology is that when anthropologists are studying the tools that people use to make their culture, sociologists will say, yes, but those are only artifacts. What about how people relate to each other? Isn't that more important? So when I'm having my oral defense for my doctorate, and one of my advisors noticed that I cited a sociologist in my dissertation. Oh no. And he said, don't you understand sociology is not doing anthropology? But as a student, I felt just as you do. Aren't they united and interrelated, and one needs the other?
They don't need, but they do overlap.
They need each other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How can you have culture without society, or society without culture? So to answer the question, what are the difficulties in conducting ethnological fieldwork? Are there only two? Two of the difficulties. Two examples.
There's definitely more.
Okay, good. Two examples. Give me two examples in conducting ethnological fieldwork.
I can give one. So one example is being a participant, like an observer, and how much to participate and how much to observe. And we talked about how.
So what is being a participant observer? How do you do that?
Take part in the activities. So you're observing a group of people, so you take part in their way of life and their activities. But you also try to observe from the outside what they're doing wrong and so on.
And how is that different from other ways of observation?
You could do interviews, and that way you are not a participant, but you are merely seeing the culture through people's experiences.
So to be a participant observer means that you put yourself in it, rather than observing it from afar or from outside. As you would do, let's say in biology, you would look at an organism or a culture through a microscope.
Go into the cell.
And then you cannot go down into the that culture through the microscope. What about language? When you put yourself in to participate, also you must learn the language of that society. So I think the point you're trying to make is long-term relationships.
Yeah.
So in terms of doing ethnology, it's not a camp out. It's living with people long-term, over time, and not only learning their way of life, worldview, language, and to partake in their daily life over the long term. So that is why people get adopted within the society, within a household. Okay, describe Taiwan in terms of its geography and geomorphology. What's the difference between geography and geomorphology?
Isn't the geomorphology the description of the land in terms of topography and seismic activity?
Right. So it is the rock that is the basis of the land. What is the composition of rock that makes a place?
So, isn't geomorph, I can say the word
Yeah.
geomorphology sort of like geography through time? So it's how the geography has changed.
So geography is the picture of the surface, and geomorphology is what is beneath the surface. It's the structure below the surface of the land, so it cannot be mapped or seen unless you use seismic device to send sound waves through the layers of rock, like where oil is located and plate tectonics. And the reason why it is important is because of the tremendous uplifting of the Pacific plate, this Philippine plate, that is being pressed against the continental Eurasian plate at a centimeter per year, lifting from the east coast of Taiwan up to the northwest and tilting down the west coast. So as the east coast is rising, the west part of Taiwan is submerged at the same rate. But then with the seismic activity, it's not only submerging but also pressing up the island so that it doesn't submerge completely. Even though it's tilting down, it is being still lifted up. But with global warming and the rise of sea levels, perhaps the sea levels will be rising faster than the uplift for the west coast of Taiwan. So the structure of the island is very important, especially when we think that Taiwan has 1,000 meters up to almost 4,000 meters into this lofty alpine, zones, climatic zones, and so we have from a tropical base up through temperate forests and alpine and Arctic, right up to the peaks. And so Taiwan has a complete range of climatic zones due to its uplift. And explain the difference between anthropology, archaeology, and how disciplines are useful in studying Taiwan. Okay, what is the difference between anthropology and archaeology?
First one is cultural / ethnology. Second is archaeology or culture of the past. The third one is languages, and the fourth one is primates.
Yes, the evolution and primate studies. So archaeology is about digging the past out. And anthropology actually is a general gloss for the study of culture overall that includes linguistics and physical and digging out artifacts. So anthropology usually is applied to cultural anthropology, and archaeology is about digging out the past. What is the difference between a priest and a shaman? The shaman goes into a seance. The shaman actually becomes the voice of the spirit. And usually when the shaman wakes up, doesn't know that it's actually interacted. And the priest actually is like a Catholic priest, cannot become God or the voice of God himself, but will interpret the word of God or the Spirit. So all these are categories within a belief system of designated responsibility. So there can be Buddhist priests and Buddhist monks. And the Buddhist priest is someone who is interpreting the word of the Buddha. And the monk is someone who is celibate, who lives in a monastery, meditates, and works for his own salvation. Okay, Orchid Island. What are the reasons the Orchid Island people have problems with the Taiwanese government? What are some of the possible solutions to these problems as well as obstacles? Orchid Island, as you know, and what is unique about Orchid Island?
There's a nuclear waste dump.
Yeah.
Okay, what else?
They don't engage in warfare. They fight it like fierce.
All right, very good. What else?
They are a separate culture on their own.
And they are very good at making boats.
Yes.
Like not like other.
So all of the people of Taiwan, indigenous people, are speaking the Formosan languages. And these people are speaking a Malayo-Polynesian language. And they don't speak a Formosan language because they never came to Taiwan. They never interacted with the people of Taiwan. They have interacted with the people in the Batanes Islands, in the Bashi Channel. And they are the furthest extent of that culture. So their relationship with the people of Taiwan did not exist until the Japanese included them through the administration of Japan that included Taiwan and Orchid Island and Green Island and the islands of Pescador, 64 islands of Hangzhou.
64?
Yes. Okay. So why are there problems with the Taiwanese government?
They wanted them to at least release.
Yeah?
The compensation.
Is that all, the only reason?
No. I think it's
The renaming of their sacred locations.
Right, renaming of their, not paying attention to the local names of places, giving Chinese names to all their local places that don't agree or make sense to the people there. And as in many places in the world, it is the appropriation of a people, their land and island, without their permission. Okay, what are some interesting things about the Zhao people who occupy Sun Moon Lake concerning their culture, history, etc.? Why have they lost language? Why are they like the smallest minority? So we had a very comprehensive, excellent introduction to what is called the 10th tribe. How many people?
700.
700 people living around Sun Moon Lake. Sun Moon Lake here is at the geographic center of Taiwan, in the Puyi Basin in Sun Moon Lake, a very, very beautiful alpine, splendid place. And they have a unique culture that became designated in 2001. Kyle, would you like to read the example?
That's not my question.
No.
Ah,
Oh, yeah,
example.
okay, yeah.
The Balkan was colonization. The term derived from a commissioned officer with all the rank of captain, especially a person of inferior rank or position, or of non-allied practice. In the 1970s, the term began to be used as a reference to colonized people. It provided a new perspective from the history of the colonized place, from the perspective of the colonized rather than from the viewpoint of the colonizer. Subaltern studies began in the early 1980s as an intervention in South Asian historiography. While subaltern began as a model for India, it quickly developed into rigorous post-colonial critique in history, anthropology, sociology, human geography, and literature.
Yeah, so this term has been used in post-colonial analysis, and that is why it has been used in the study of the people of Sun Moon Lake, because she defined them as people more endangered than the black-faced spoonbill. And yet found that they had power. And that is really the meaning of the term. Because if you have a position as an officer below captain, it means you could be promoted. You could become a captain. And she did not explain this in terms of the terminology of having people essentially without a voice sharing their voice. So when I was in Montreal, there was the occupation camp called Occupy Montreal in front of the stock exchange. And it was well laid out, tent city, avenues and walkways, and the people who did not have a voice are now presenting themselves with a voice. The conference, I found a book, a new book by Roy Wagner, W-A-N-G-N-E-R, Roy Wagner. And his book is called Coyote. And I was reading it, and it was very interesting. It's an ethnography of the plains people of the American Midwest, as described in the movie. And what is the part in the movie that is not correctly understood is that it is not a wolf that is dancing, it is coyote. And so when I first looked at the title of this movie, it did not make sense. But if it's Dancing with Coyote, it makes perfect sense. And in the white socked coyote in the movie actually is the trickster, the originator, the shaman of the people of the Great Plains. Not a wolf, and lives in the grass. Wolves live in the forest. So as an ethnographer, when you sit and look at a movie, even you can see the problems presented that don't make sense. But to the moviegoers who have not studied ethnography, they won't know that. They won't even know that it doesn't make sense. Yes.
But that's the problem with a lot of movies. For example, like Hollywood movies about where people people are being discriminated, I would say, or like they have characteristics in the movie that maybe Americans think they belong to them, but in reality it looks different. That's a common mistake, or not mistake, but a common thing that happens in movies, and people who are not aware of this don't ever recognize that and think that's just right.
That's a good point. But in this particular film, and what Kevin Costner tries to do is to show the genuine language, the way that people, spending time and research, and yet miss that most important, even in the title. To me, this is astonishing. When I lived in Thailand, because in Thailand, also women speak different than men. And I noticed that when men pick up a Thai girlfriend, and then they start speaking like a woman, I find it astonishing that they never realize they're speaking like a woman. And it's, yeah, so the way that men should learn language is like hanging out with other men, and then you pick up how men speak, you know. And if you learn a language from the opposite gender, actually you're going to pick up those nuances in your speaking that will make, when you speak to men, feel strange. And I've noticed this also in some nuances in Taiwanese. If men start learning from their girlfriends in Taiwan, it becomes dangerous. There are nuances in speaking. And it's also because the nuances in speaking among women is more as a process of socialization or politeness. And for men, it's more about getting to the point and showing boldness and strength. So different words and different gestures and suggestions in speaking will be used.
But I feel like that's similar with every language.
In most languages,
Yeah.
but in some languages like Thai, actually,
Oh, there's actual
the
difference.
pronunciation of the words are
Yeah.
completely different as women speak, to show a feminine quality or masculine quality.
In Chinese.
Taiwanese is
But
just,
Chinese, no.
it's only about word choice
It is.
and what men select over what women will talk about. And a lot of topic conversation will be different. Okay, we're doing very well. I think let's take a 5-minute break. How would you evaluate the influence and role of the ethnographer and anthropologist in fieldwork today include also newer developments and use of modern technology to state your opinion, such as the computer, notebook, video, digital archives, interviewing techniques. What would you say?
Can you repeat the question one more time? The beginning of the question?
How would you evaluate the influence and role of the ethnographer and anthropologist in fieldwork today, including the newer developments and use of modern technology to state your opinion?
In the book you edited, it says that they will use carbon dating to find out that the pottery is date. And at one point, he said that the book said that that pottery could not have advanced just by its own, like all of a sudden. So by carbon dating, they can find when the pottery was made. I mean, how old the pottery is roughly. So then, the pottery in Taiwan is the oldest. So this way, I was around.
Okay, good. Yes?
Well, in terms of maybe how they did it 50 years ago, where it was all field notes and just written, and then someone else reading what happened, now it's kind of a unique advantage where you can actually record it in video and audio and let people actually see. Even though they're not directly experiencing it, it makes it a little more real than just reading the words on the page.
What is ethnicity? So your ethnicity is bundled in your language, worldview, religion, way of life, and how you put that together to make a definition of who you are within a group, as a group member. Okay, describe some features of Taiwan's geography. Anyone want to add to their understanding of the geography?
lot of hot springs in Thailand. Abundant.
Okay, so why are there hot springs?
Volcanic.
So there's a volcano here, Volcano. Okay, and then wherever the crust gets cracked, because Taiwan is on a fault, and from the fault it then opens up to the mantle, and this hot magma that's under the mantle can heat the water that trickles down through the fault, through the cracks, and comes back up as geysers or hot springs. Okay, what else? Yes, tropical line passes here, like a belt. And even on the very first maps of Taiwan, it was correctly positioned on the tropical line. And so Taiwan has what is called perpetual summer in the south and a temperate north. What else? Taiwan has plains, plateaus, mountain peaks, rift valley, basins, three important basins, Taichung, Taipei, and Puli.
Actually, as you mentioned, the highest peak in East Asia.
Yes, Yushan is just under 4,000 meters. Okay, what influence did the Dutch have upon Taiwan? What was their original intentions, as well as some of the positive and negatives that they provided for the country's development? That's a really good question. Dutch. Not to industrialize. What was their occupation? Trade for pharmaceuticals, for herbs, and medicinal products.
Didn't they want to settle in Nepal first?
No, they couldn't.
Yeah, but that was the reason why they landed Taiwan. They didn't want to come to Taiwan.
No, they wanted to trade directly with China and could not settle their land there. The Portuguese were already there. And so they went to Hongpu here. This is always a transition point, and then to China. Yeah, but essentially they settled the south a little bit.
And then north anyway, offered the Spanish.
And then the Spanish, they wanted on this side and settled the north. And then the Dutch got insecure within the north and knocked them out, went back to the Philippines. And then the Dutch got knocked out. The settlement after change, making Taiwan part of the policy. So what did the Dutch contribute?
First of all, infrastructure.
Good infrastructure, that's correct. Canals,
They introduced an alphabetical chart for one tribe.
yes, yes. For Siraya, they did the book of Matthew, that is in Dutch and Siraya language. And also they built roads, trading posts, and they interchange with people. churches, schooling, education, and maps. Infectious disease. Always. Happens with people meeting each other. The Austronesian language family is like any other Indo-European language family or Sino-Tibetan language family, Bantu, Swahili, East African languages, whatever language family you're dealing with is grouped as individual languages that have some common denominator and they spread out. So language to language that is similar or related is spread out to another region. And all the languages got spread out. And then some got reduced over time. And one of the most significant spreading of languages is English, but yet it's one of the derivatives of the Indo-European language family. And for that, if we talk about the Austronesian language family, Malay is that lingua franca, of which most people of the language family speak or have been influenced by Malay. So most of the language family is the Malayo-Polynesian branch. That is the Malay and Polynesian speaking areas of the language family. The smallest unit yet found in Taiwan, having the distinction of half the linguistic branches of the Austronesian language family is found among the Formosan languages, making the Formosan languages a unique linguistic understanding of the evolution and development of this language. Although the Formosan languages are only found in Taiwan, they do not spread out. And yet, the language family, according to the hypothesis, that this circulation could have developed in Taiwan and spread out. Yes. So in this hypothesis, it is considered that there was a language of these Formosan speakers that moved to the Batangas, to the Philippines, and outward into the Pacific region. But each time in this development of the language family, you have an information of the time of formation of this language. It might take 1,000 years. So as it moved out to Taiwan, integrated maybe that period to the Philippines, Micronesia, and then stalled and started again moving out from the Solomon Islands beyond Micronesia into Polynesia. So it becomes more of a common language as it moves further out, and more of a distinct language when it's at its formation stage. How many Aboriginal tribes are recognized in Taiwan? That's a good question. How does this compare to how China recognizes Taiwanese Aboriginal tribes? Please describe the virtual custom that are Taiwanese Aboriginal tribes. Rituals, right? Question, comment? Okay, discuss the theories of the Austronesian languages and peoples, the Taiwan origins, describe the changes of ethnic structure of Taiwan, the first settlers of the Chinese and the Dutch to the present. That's actually a book. Yes, with how short. Examine how did the Japanese colonize and their effect on the life of those people. So Japanese colonization. We wrote much of that. How would you?
Well, we talked about the maps. Like the Japanese were the ones who did very detailed maps.
Yes.
They did it before entering Taiwan.
Yes. Yes, the Japanese were already mapping in the 1870s before their occupation, before their occupation.
And also like Japanese used surveys and censuses to govern the country.
Yes. So essentially Japan was the first modern administrator of Taiwan and the first administration of all of Taiwan. Never happened under the Qing dynasty. Although the Qing dynasty was expecting Taiwan's province in 1885 to become modern. And the first governor tried to do that with the railroad, electricity, sanitation. And the first did not have time or the energy or the strength of the late Qing dynasty to do that.
In the book, it was mentioned that the Japanese used some folklore hero called Mushin, and this apparently made them very angry because I think Mushin tried to bring them peace.
Yes, and civilization.
Yeah, and the Japanese in their books, and even after Japanese did this, and then China, like the Taiwanese government also administered this in their books to local people. This also made them very angry, and after a while they canceled this out of like the books, school books. Wushan, something like this.
Yes.
Yeah.
That happened in Jai. The Japanese tried to not acknowledge the civilizing quality of China in Taiwan, especially with indigenous people, and made itself the premier civilizing force for Taiwan. Actually, even though Taiwan was considered a colony, Japan tried to treat Taiwan and integrate it into an imperial system of Japan as part of Japan. According to James Cook, given the navigation skills of the Austronesian people, which he had come to discover, where did he theorize that Austronesian people came from?
James Cook retired?
Huh?
James Cook retired? No? Who's James Cook? Let's say
He is the first British navigator, and when he arrived in the Hawaiian Islands, the Sandwich Islands, we discovered that the Austronesian navigators had the means to sail against skilled navigators. And therefore, they probably were sailing from Asia and not from South America. What is the one source of evidence that we have from South America in the Pacific? The sweet potato, as it originated from Peru, Bolivia, and moved out, was been cultivated on islands, and it moved out from South America across the Pacific. And again, who carried the provisions, the yam, or the pig, the sweet potato? It were these Austronesian navigators. Okay. Who are the original inhabitants of Taiwan? Do they have a name? Yes, Paleolithic. Paleolithic means late Old Stone Age. Late Old Stone Age people. And when did they come?
7,000 ago.
No, that's the Neolithic.
40,000, 30,000.
Yeah, it could be 40 to 30,000 years. And Taiwan was not an island, so this part of Taiwan was a grassy plain over here. They could just wander across to this grassland. And yes, and they were sorting out what game they could capture the large mammals and came across. And this part, we have complete evidence of them because this has been a coastal area ever since East Asia. So the caves are still here, but this part now is pretty much submerged. Describe developments in mapping Taiwan. That's a good question. And describe the moments of Aboriginal people during the time of martial law. Movements. Why are there movements of Aboriginal people during the time of martial law? Huh? No, actually, during the time of martial law, everything was fixed, and there was no movement. So the time of movement was actually
Different fences.
it was prior to the Japanese.
So like the opposite, so during the martial law, everything was
Frozen.
before was stores and then was
Fixed.
fixed, right?
And the Japanese, they force moved people. And before the Japanese, people were in a state of migration.
But alliance of Taiwan's Aboriginal tribes, they're pesticides in Canada. After
For example, the Satek people living up here, and they broke off into another group called the Roko, and they moved down here. And so we have different peoples, different areas. The Yabalan were probably over here, and they moved into Ilan. And then they moved from Ilan to Walia. So you have all the different peoples in migration prior to the coming of the nationalist Chinese, or even prior to the Japanese. And under martial law, that was in effect since, let's say, 49 through 87. Describe differences between anthropology, ethnology, and archaeology. Can you get that one? Good. So after martial law, what social movements of Taiwan? lot of these questions are about Aboriginal people. What were the social movements of Taiwan since martial law? So this movement, actually, the movement is a social movement, right? Not the movements like migration movements, not social movements. And social movements occurred since martial law. So hunting, no matter what kind or type of hunting you did, was to give respect to the hunter. And it was your achievement, the way you received your tattoo or your acknowledgement was because you hunted successfully as a man. And because men were hunters, they could not be married until the age of 37, but then they became a householder, not a hunter. And then lived domestically in the village, and then would act as an elder and raise children. But before that age, you would then be considered as someone who would protect the boundaries of the grounds of resources in the areas that were designated for the village to support your village. And then the animals or the people that got into your domain were hunted. You had the right to hunt those. And usually the head would be taken as a skull and kept, whether it be a bear, a deer, flying squirrel, person. And the spirit then would be part of your community, your household. Yes. And it would help you in the future with more spirits and the respect to those spirits and the knowledge of those spirits. So it's very different from the Western perspective of hunting and taking heads for trophies. In the Midwest, I have met people in the United States who actually go once a year for game hunting in Africa or Asia or someplace, and shoot the animal and take the head, have it stuffed and mounted in their house. And that is called trophy hunting. So officially there are 14 Aboriginal languages in Taiwan officially. And when you talk about a living language, for example, it was mentioned Siraya is the next one, but because there aren't enough speakers of that language, if there are any speakers of that language in daily life. So therefore, it has to be reconstituted, reconstructed, relearned, and even the young people, they don't see any use in doing that. So therefore, it becomes a language of history that was once spoken in Taiwan, and actually it was a very large language of Taiwan. It was the lingua franca, the trade language of Taiwan, and it got absorbed into the mainstream of Taiwan society among the Bengal, as they Sinisas, and then the Fujian dialects or Minnan Hua then became the lingua franca and replaced the Siraya. But the Siraya writing system from the Dutch, it continued up through the 19th century. Okay. Oh, there is a question Participant observation, we did that. Okay, how does the field worker conduct his or her field work, and what difficulties? Priest of shaman, group interaction. This is with absoluteness, degree of dissimilar politics standpoints between different tribes in Taiwan. Again, the absoluteness, degree of dissimilar politics standpoints between different tribes in Taiwan. Again, the absoluteness, degree of dissimilar politics standpoints between different tribes in Taiwan. Hmm? Hmm? Okay, when we think about that for number 2, what are the religious representations which are believed in and highly praised by the different tribes in Taiwan? How to evaluate education policy to make all Taiwan tribes merge more?
What was the question?
How to evaluate education policy to make all Taiwan tribes merge more? Okay, so this term, indigenous, we can toss it out because it is a gloss, it is a basket that we put these different people in, we call them all indigenous. Actually, indigenous means different peoples of differences. And why we call them all indigenous, why not just call them all people? I don't see why indigenous has any more or less signification than any other group. Now next week we're going to talk about the Hakka people. And what are the Hakka? Who are the Hakka? And they're also a minority. So there are different, actually, there are many minorities in Taiwan. And it doesn't really matter if you call yourself indigenous or not. These are simply cultural groups inhabiting Taiwan. Certainly the people of Orchid Island, they don't call themselves indigenous. They call themselves people. Good question. Answer? What is the difference between Aborigines and indigenous? Okay, good. Aboriginal means the first comers. And so Australia's Aborigines make sense because they went there about 60,000 years ago, they settled there, they're Paleolithic people. They did not have weaving, they did not have refined stone tools, they did not have pottery, they did not have architecture, they lived naked on the land. And then with the Neolithic Revolution, you have people with weaving skills, refined tools, and architecture, religious orientation, set burial, ritual, and the development of a culture as it then becomes distinctly modern. So the indigenous people in Taiwan are from the Neolithic, primarily, that went into the Middle Age culture 2,000 years ago. But then if you look at the whole spectrum of people in Taiwan, going back to the Paleolithic, those Paleolithic people were the Aborigines of Taiwan. And the Neolithic people, then, because it wasn't known that there was a Paleolithic culture at the time that the people, indigenous people got the term Aborigines. So it was felt at the time. It was only in 1969 that Professor Song Wen-Chen discovered the Paleolithic sites that made this very known Paleolithic age for Taiwan.
So, the Australian Aboriginals are Paleolithic people.
Yes.
Does Taiwan have any political?
No, we learned that.
Yeah,
They met the Neolithic people, but somehow they disappeared. Yeah.
Again, they were integrated or part of the mainstream.
So they became Neolithic.
That then became Neolithic. And then again with the metal age, the metal tools, then the people gave up the Neolithic days and started using metal tools. And then when Han-Chinese arrived, they became again integrated into that dominant culture and their tools of the language. So you can see that the waves of modernization in Taiwan and then upgrading into those tool-using people up to the present. So again, now we come back to the question, what is the difference between Aborigines and Indigenous? Of course, in Canada, they're known as First Nations. In the United States, Native American. In Australia, Aboriginal. And in India, it is against the law to be Indigenous. What's going on? According to the Constitution, all people in India are indigenous. That make a group counter to all the people. They call them indigenous. So in India, they're called tribal schedule or caste schedule. That means they're scheduled into civilization. So if you're in Turkey or Russia or the United States or Canada or Australia, how you look at people, the source people, will be different, and what you call them will be different.
I think I read an article that the Australian Centre for Aborigines was renamed, I think, 8 times in the last 5 years or 10 years, because every time they named it differently, there was some kind of group was excluded or didn't feel right with the name, so that probably shows that it's really difficult to deal with the whole naming situation. Even in Australia.
Why do people who are Aboriginal in Australia prefer to keep that name, even though it seems awkward and a castback to the 19th century? And even in Taiwan, I don't know why it is still used either. But it's not used as preference, or it could be used as preference. Tell me why.
Maybe because they're proud to be the first.
Okay, we're proud to be the first. Okay. Like First Nation. Okay, what else?
But they identify it. Okay, what is ethnicity and
In Australia, under British law, as you know, Australia is still a dominion under the British Crown. there was what's called native law in Australia that included all rock, flora, and fauna. And under native law, all rock, flora, and fauna had the right legally to be exploited, to be mined, to be cut, to be hunted. Native law. And so the people decided that the Aboriginal people decided that they did not want to be known as native people because they could be mined, cut, hunted, harvested, hunted. Yeah. They did not want to be under native state law. So they kept themselves as a separate human category of Aboriginal, and again, the cannibal, the First Nation people, and they prefer that term for themselves. If you use that term in the United States for indigenous people, you're looking at your death warrant. So it's a very difficult proposition to classify people using these terms, glosses of terminology, because it gives a sense that there are people who are more civilized, more sophisticated than indigenous, and indigenous, Aboriginal, First Nation, Native American, all these terms have a sense that they are lower, savage, hunting, gathering, less civilized. And it becomes, for the colonizer and the colonized, a great difficulty in modern society. And as we know, all lands have colonizers and the colonized. So at this conference in Montreal, there was a question, who are the indigenous people of Europe? So in Europe, the Basque live in the Pyrenees, their language, based on their language, and the Celtic people from Ireland, the Nordic people, these are the so-called remnants, pre-Roman, Latinized people. Okay, the motives for the spread of Austronesian languages. I don't think language has its motive to spread. I think part of the problem is that the language is something that is just word of mouth from one people to another, your neighbors, and it spreads without motivation. But there could be such as English or Malay or Chinese languages that spread because of trade, or motivation for trade, or navigation, chart making, or colonization, or exploitation, those motivations. There was a film that I viewed at the conference and it was about the people of Alaska. And when Alaska was sold from Russia, by Russia, to the United States for a few $1 million, the people, they thought it was just the Russian fort that was being sold, and the land within the fort. They heard about this treaty of sale of Alaska, and they didn't know that those people who lived outside the fort were being sold as well. And then suddenly they had a new administration, new laws, new social control devices constraining them, and they had no part in the selling of that land, or even, I mean, they had in their worldview, how can you sell all the forests and the landscape and the fish and everything that is in the realm of the space without your acknowledgement or even notification? That happens in history, many people, but it has nothing to do with the spread of Austronesian language or its divisions. It spread naturally as people used the language to speak it, and where it went. Now we could say that the Austronesian language spread according to where it met the least resistance. When it went to East Africa, there was Bantu, Swahili speakers on the move, and the Malay people decided to just stay in Madagascar and do their trade from there. And they didn't settle in Australia because Australia was occupied. New Guinea proper, too many 700 languages already established there. They skirted around on the outer islands and into the Pacific. They found many uninhabited islands. And that's how the Polynesian language spread out. We know that each of the peoples in their group, they had a different hierarchy, different system of administration of their group. And this course is not required that you know how each of the ethnic structure of the group forms its administration. But you need to know that each has its own separate style. For example, the Taiwan in the south, as we look at this visiting the museum, and John Bin was explaining about the Taiwan. The Taiwan have their chiefs, their nobility, and their commoners, and that is the classic structure of a tribe. Whereas the Punun, they're egalitarian, and they don't have chiefs, and they don't have a tribal structure at all. They should not even be called a tribe. And that is why this term, Bulo, community, if you call all of these peoples among their vicinity of living, where they live, as if they're Bulo. And you know that they are living as a community, not as a village. Because village implies villa, or house, or structure. Villa is a piece of architecture that is clustered in public village. But yet many of these people are not living as we consider a village structure. They're living according to their language. And they become a community, they interact because of their language, and they can be spread all over. And the political system is then according to the community structure. And that is differentiated and different according to each community, very much so. And many of the indigenous people from their community, if they lose their land or they lose respect within their community, they feel that they're outcasts, they will move to Taipei or to Kaohsiung and move to the city because they have suffering from some stigma which they don't want to be associated with in their community. They might move out, that's option. And then they modernize within the commercial cities. But even so, they might return to their harvest festival or some other activity to reassociate themselves in some way back to the community. So all the communities, especially the Hakka people in Taiwan, they have moved and spread out all over. They're no longer just living in the Hakka community, but they have spread to all the places, and only in certain festive occasions or family reunions or going back to their Hakka temple to worship their ancestors. They come back to their sense of lineage. Otherwise, the people in Taiwan, from a very superficial view, you would think that all the people are Taiwanese. But when you look at people carefully in terms of their family, their structure, their language, their identity of place, not their own birthplace, but their parents' or grandparents' birthplace, you find that Taiwan has a very specific structured locality of source. All of the families living in Taiwan. So when I meet up with people, I ask, where are your grandparents from? And that will give a sense of source to people. Because if I ask someone, where are you from, and the person says, I'm from Taipei, then my next question is, okay, and your parents? Oh, from Taipei. And your grandparents? Aha. They are not from Taipei. And then I ask, when you go to your grandparents' home or for a family reunion, is that where you gather? Yes. And then that becomes their source of their community inspiration of gathering. So I've just come from what is called the Thanksgiving holiday in the United States, and by act of Congress in the 1930s designated on the last Thursday in November, and it's on a Thursday, not on particular date, because you require time to go from any place in the United States to get home to partake in the Thanksgiving family reunion. And it is the only holiday in the United States that is so-called native or indigenous, of which then you partake in native or indigenous foods like the pheasant, the turkey, or the potato, or the sweet potato, and then you have cranberry, and all piled up, and it's so it's about family reunion and local foods, whereas Christmas is, of course, or Easter, these are European holidays and European foods, and different occasions. In American holidays, usually source back to European inspiration, but only Thanksgiving is this sort of native, down-to-earth family reunion designated by Congress.
Last time, I was in the sauna and I was talking to some friends, and then some people said, "Oh yeah, like Taiwanese people are real people. Like people always think about the foreigners coming from China, but they said, oh, the originals here, they are not Chinese." But like because I come to this class, and I know that there is a hypothesis that even the Aboriginal people here might have come from South China, mainland South China. So when I talk this to my friends, they're like, sure.
And then you could say, oh, and people came here when Taiwan was not even an island.
Yeah. So like, I think like when we learning like stuff like this is much more important.
And also you could mention that every indigenous group, all of the Aboriginal people in Taiwan, there wasn't any group except for Orchid Island people. But all the people in Taiwan, all indigenous people in Taiwan, they had no name for them. There was no name given by the people living in Taiwan for this island. And no one even considered that they were on an island to give a name to. They only gave a name to their village. And that was the extent of their name.